Anyway, this man goes to the doctor, and the doctor puts his hand on his shoulder, which is never a good sign, and he says, "I have some bad news for you." And the man said, "What is it?" And he said, "Well, it seems that you only have 10. The man said, 10? 10 what? 10 years? 10 months? 10 days? What? 10 what? The doctor said, 9, 8, 7. Okay, I'll wait for the rest of you to catch up, all right? But you only have 6 seconds left, okay? So there's it. So the countdown, of course, was a tremendous shock for this gentleman. And we know one thing, whatever he was worried about 10 minutes before changed immediately at that countdown. It was certainly a reality check for him. He gained a new understanding and a new knowledge that changed everything for him. He received different information, and it shook up his whole world. Now, those are two gifts of the Holy Spirit, knowledge and understanding, and they're gifts of prayer. God gives us new knowledge in prayer, new information, new ways of sorting and sifting what we already know, and therefore a deeper and a different understanding. God shifts our perspective. Hopefully in prayer, whatever we were worrying about before is somehow different and changed, and that's a helpful thing. So although it may seem, like a negative meditation, sometimes it's important to pray with a broader perspective. We get trapped in the moment. Prayer, we can say to God, help us to see things in a broader way. Now, St. Ignatius of Loyola, in his 30-day retreat, in the third week meditation part of it, you contemplate Jesus' suffering and death in the light of the resurrection, of course, but also your own. And everybody always freaks out, okay? 9, 8, 7, we can go there, right? You can see how quick that could happen. In light of God's love, of course, there's some comfort, but it is a challenging meditation. It's a challenging reflection. The good that comes from it, it shifts the perspective in everything because we realize what's really important, what's a priority. And we see this today in the first reading from Stephen. He's about to be killed. There's the countdown. They're picking up the rocks, and he's able to pray for his enemies. Maybe an hour before, he was thinking about a lot of other things, but suddenly he realized what's important. My relationship with God, that my spirit be free, that I'm not tied to this earth by anger, and that I can go freely to God. It was his prayer that gave him a new knowledge and understanding of what to do in that particular situation. And certainly the gospel stories all during this Easter season are inviting us to a new way of seeing, to see resurrection even when we seem to be looking at death. And, I made this homily a few days ago, and I really was not focusing on it too much. I was trying to count down, and it's uncomfortable. You really don't want to think about it. Even though there's many areas in my life where I'd like to shift some perspective and let things go and focus on something more positive. Anybody with me there in that? I couldn't do the countdown. It seemed like a good idea, and I figured, well, let them try it, see how it works out, okay? But, God has a good sense of humor. Last night, I went with my family to kind of a reunion of cousins, and I haven't seen them in 5 or 6 years. And, of course, they've matured. So it was a surprise to see their maturity. It ever happened to you when you visit your relatives? You say, what happened to them? But what happened to me, too, right? So it's always kind of a surprise. And then we got to learn about their lives in the last years and some of the very challenging situations that they face with themselves and with their children and with their children's children now, my peers. And whatever we were talking about in the car over there immediately became nonsense, the things that annoyed us. Of course, my family only says the novenas in the car, but for the rest of you who talk about each other, like we all do, who said what and who's this and who's that, and back and forth, blessing all kinds of clowns. after the party, on the way home, we were quiet for a long time. And of course, what came to me was this homily. It wasn't necessarily a countdown, but it was a countdown. It was a reality check about what's important. And what we all kind of agreed on was how we were all glad we were still in the car together, able to even, be with each other, and how precious really life is. And all the other things fell apart because they weren't important anymore. So it's just a practical example of prayer that happens in our everyday life. We have experiences that challenge us to pray, to give us new knowledge and understanding, and it shifts our perspective. Now, certainly, time passes, you go right back to your old tricks, another opportunity for prayer. So I offer this exercise to you, which I intend to do more often myself now, since I had that experience last night and realized how valuable it really was, to, have a little countdown with God, to make a prayer and say, okay, if you said to me 10, 9, 8, 7, what would be important and what would not be important, kind of like the Ignatian meditation. Now, what's important, and I caution you about this, is do this with God in prayer, knowing this. First of all, it's an imagination prayer, so that you don't have to be afraid, but that God in this prayer is holding you, sustaining you, strengthening you, giving you wisdom and courage and knowledge and understanding, all the gifts of the Holy Spirit. So pray not in a sense of, oh no, but yes, Lord, show me what's important in my life so that I can share my gifts and talents and really focus as your light on these dark areas to change how I see things so that I'm free. I'm free of the garbage that I accumulate about what's important and who said what and what happened, to the relationships, to the preciousness of the time we have together, that this little window of opportunity that God gives us to share what we have and who we are with each other. So about all I can say to you this morning is 8, 7, 6.